Welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with CPA and personal financial specialist, Phil Putney. Now let's get rolling with today's show.
Hey everybody, welcome into another edition of Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts. Back with Phil Putney and myself here to talk about understanding RMDs. We're going to do a little straightforward guide, if you will, on these for the soon-to-be retired for RMDs. Or I guess you could be retired and still wait since they keep pushing these ages back. So we're going to talk about that.
They keep pushing them back. So
yeah, confusing the dates. So we're going to just kind of hit the RMD thing again and just kind of straightforward, quick approach on this. Although it dawned on me, Phil, as I hit the record button and it was counting down from 5, I was like, I never wear white on the show, and it's after Labor Day.
Oh, that's right.
I think I did a fashion faux pas.
That's right. You did. You can't wear white after Labor Day.
I don't know how old that thing is, but does anybody adhere to that anymore? I have no idea.
I don't know. The fashion police, they're going to tag us this week.
I don't know what it means, why it exists, or whatever, but I just put it on. So anyway, how are you, my friend?
Doing good. Doing good. Yeah. Cooking. It's crazy. After Labor Day, and we're into the upper 80s and 90s. It's just nuts.
99 here tomorrow.
Oh, my word.
Yeah.
You can have it.
Yeah. Crazy. In September, right? So anyway.
Allergies are coming back in September. I'm like, what is going on?
So we had a massive swing, and we're getting off topic, but we'll get into it real fast. So it was 55 after the hurricane passed through last week. Okay. Yeah. So nighttime, it's like 9 p.m. It was 55. 3 days later, it's going to be 99.
That's Michigan weather, seeing those kind of swings.
40-degree swings are nuts, right? So anyway, hope everybody's doing good and had a good holiday after the long Labor Day weekend. And, are you in this age bracket, right? So I'll be 52 in 2 weeks. We were talking about that, just a little bit ago. And so getting close to, thinking about retirement in general. RMDs, not there yet, right? They've changed these numbers on that, but it's something to start thinking about, especially if you're proactive and planning for the conversation of what am I going to do with these? How are they going to affect me? Do I need to do something with them ahead of time? All those kinds of things. I want to be more tax efficient now while I know what's in front of me. What is the confusion around RMDs? The government hasn't helped because they've changed it 3 times in the past couple of years. Right. So what's an RMD first off, Phil, just to kind of run it back down, and what's the ages now?
Yeah, so RMD, required minimum distribution, talking in the lingo here again. But it's basically a distribution on your qualified accounts, IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, you name it, whatever that tax deferred qualified type of an investment is. And the whole purpose is the IRS. I always joke. I said, they give you this time frame where you don't have to touch the money, right? You can delay, defer, let it grow. But this is the end of it. The required minimum distribution, and that's their version of retirement. At these ages is when they say, okay, enough's enough. Now we want our tax money. Is what it comes down to, right? They've let you defer it all these years. Now that it's time to pay the piper, so to speak. So you have to turn that around and start taking distributions.
So think about it like this, too. We hear a lot of conversation around this, Phil, that there's $32 trillion in debt and there's $40+ trillion in retirement money sitting out there that has not been taxed.
Yeah. And that's
a big bullseye.
They're a very patient creditor. They know the rules. They make them. So they're wanting their payback at that point. So to your point on ages, it started at 70 and a half, went to 72 for a short period of time, then 73. And at the time they introduced 73, was CARE Act 2.0. Now it's 75 for those like in our.
Has that kicked in yet, Phil, or does that trickle in 24 or 25?
Yeah, 24.
24.
So, it's going to be a couple of years out yet before anyone is going to be in that age 75 RMD. So most
for people are. I'll see 75.
Yeah, you'll see 75 is your RMD age.
Yeah. Okay, so if you've already started RMDs, Phil, you're already in. So don't worry about it. You're doing them. They're there, right? So nothing's really changed for folks. You're taking them every year. It is what it is, right?
Correct.
So if you haven't started them yet, this is where it's obviously important to pay attention and think about this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. There's no way to get around an RMD. It is what it is. That was your agreement. Well, there's no way of getting around the RMD.
Okay.
There's ways to minimize the effect. So we'll kind of, I guess, differentiate between the two.
Right.
But yeah, the RMD was that other side of the equation of your agreement with the IRS where they let you defer the money, take the deduction, defer all the tax Now it's time to take the money out. So there's no way to avoid it. Anytime money comes out of that tax deferred account, it will be taxed. So.
And they did change in the Secure Act 2.0, as you mentioned. They did reduce the penalty because there is a hefty penalty if you do not take it out, if you do not do it. So, and there's some things you can do. You can send the letter in and blah, 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 and they may forgive it, right? But, I mean, why mess with the hassle? They went from what, 50% now to 25?
25. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to miss it for sure. And even if you do miss it, the reality is, as long as you catch it before they do, and you take the missed required distributions, generally they'll waive the penalty, or it won't even come up. You don't want to miss it, right? Don't forget the date is the best thing. Make sure you've got a plan to know when that is and how it's going to affect your scenario.
Well, let's play some numbers games here for folks a little bit. So let's just say you got $1 million, okay, and it's in a 401k, right? So it's been waiting. They want their cut, right? So what's the percentage usually? So it's a sliding scale, correct? It changes as we age.
Correct. And it's actually not a percentage. It's a life expectancy table. And we can maybe put a link in the show notes even. But I mean, it basically, as you age, life expectancy goes down. So if you were 75 this year, let's say, you look at your balance in your IRAs, 401ks from the end of last year, 12/31 of 2022 in this case, divided by the life expectancy factor in that table, which I believe for 75 is 27.4. Okay. So I always say it starts out at around 4%.
Okay, so let's just for easy math.
So $1 million, you're looking at $40,000 you have to take.
You have to take. And of course, and just to kind of play the scary game, if you don't, right, it's 25% penalty on top of that, right?
And you still have to take the RMD and pay the tax. So it's not like the 25% doesn't include the tax. It's on top of, because it's a penalty.
It's hefty, right? So again, just don't miss it, right? So back to the numbers game. So if people, you got to pull 40 grand out. If you've if you put a good plan and a strategy in place, you're working with a financial professional. Many times you guys hear, I mean, like I talk to advisors all across the country, and every week it's at least one or two say the same thing. Clients go, I don't need the money. What do I do with it? But you have to take it out, right? So now people start wondering, okay, what's some ways to be efficient with it? Or then we start to get into the conversation of, do we want to look at things ahead of time before RMDs are due and maybe move that money prior to? Or do we want to do things like a QCD to satisfy stuff? So let's kind of break that down real fast. So let's go back to the $1 million. You got to pull 40 out for the first year. If you're charitable minded, you can satisfy some or all of that, correct, with a QCD.
Yeah. So, and this is where the rules kind of broke apart. So remember, RMD started at 70.5. That's what an RMD was. Right. So when they introduced this concept of a QCD or qualified charitable distribution, the way the rule was written, it was tied to age 70.5, which at the time was when RMD started.
And they left it.
And they left the QCD at 70.5. So we've got this little bit of a disconnect where, you technically could start QCDs at 70.5 before you get forced into RMDs. So just a kind of a goofy scenario now. Right. But ultimately, so what a qualified charitable distribution QCD is you're having your custodian send up to $100,000. So it doesn't have to be just the RMD. Okay. It can be more, it can be less. Maximum you can do per year is $100,000. Okay. And as long as it goes from the IRA or 401k, whatever it is, to that qualified charity, then it's not a taxable event.
Okay. So for you or them.
So charitable entity, they don't have tax anyways.
True. But sometimes you got to state the obvious.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. But I mean, the real advantage is, especially in light of the higher standard deductions that we have today, right? The majority of the time, you're even if you're contributing, you're probably not getting that benefit from a tax standpoint because you're already below the standard deduction. Okay. So this gives you almost the best of both worlds because you're in effect getting the full contribution because you're not taking the distribution into income, if that makes sense.
Right.
You know,
and again, if you're charitable minded, this could be something for you to do. But somebody listening to this might go, Mark, you're insane. I'm not giving $40,000 away to a charity.
Yeah.
Not saying you should have to, but you can do portions, right? So let's say you got to satisfy that $40,000 first RMD or whatever. If you wanted to give $10,000 to your qualified charity of choice, you could, but you still have to satisfy the remainder, correct?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, whatever you give in a QCD goes towards the RMD. Okay. So in your case, if it was 40,000 is the RMD and you were giving 10,000 to a charity already, your church, then you can have it go directly to the church or whatever charity
or whatever, right? Qualified.
You know,
not the Church of Uncle Larry or anything like that. Right?
That's right. Yeah. It's got to be a qualified charity. Right. It is a way, not around the RMD, but it is a way to help minimize the effect of it. Yeah,
you're redirecting it, right? So you're satisfying it, you're redirecting it. Now, on that same conversation point, Phil, so what people have been doing the last couple of years is, and this is where confusion comes into play a little bit, is they've been doing conversions over to Roth accounts, right? So you're paying the tax now. So make sure that people are hearing that. It doesn't mean you're getting out of it, right? To Phil's point earlier, you can't get out of owing the tax money. They want their money. So it's in an RMD form, or as if you pay the taxes now while you're converting to a Roth, right? But it's the devil that you know. So maybe that makes sense to do right now if you're in a 12% tax bracket potentially.
Oh, absolutely. Especially if you're in a lower bracket. Sometimes even if you're not, which kind of comes back to the beginning discussion of, you know, how do you avoid it or what can you do about it? Well, the first thing is have a plan. Understand what this looks like. Mm-hmm. You know, don't just have the accounts and, you know, sitting in the IRAs, the 401ks thinking, oh, I'm going to defer it. Yeah, 78.5, that's, you know, years down the road. I don't have to worry about that.
Right.
Yeah, you know, why would I even think about that?
Because you got a tax time bomb waiting. You got a 40,000 and it's going to go up too, right, Phil? But with that age thing, the older we get, the more we have to pull, correct? The percentage.
Yeah, I mean, just the way the math works is life expectancy goes down, meaning you're dividing by a smaller number each year. So effectively the percentage goes up. You know, so typically for the average person, and obviously this fluctuates year to year with markets, right? But you're going to see a required minimum distribution go up every year.
Okay.
You know, if you think of it kind of at an average return, and again, it's going to be up and down depending on what's going on in the account. But have a plan up front. Understand what this looks like. Don't just wait till 75, because if you do, I don't want to say it's too late, but you're starting to limit your options, right? So
that's a great point. If you started it, there's no changing after that, or?
Well, no. So as far as Roth, I mean, you can do whatever you want. But once you start a required distribution, an RMD has only two places to go. You spend it or you save it, right? Okay. Or, I mean, it can go to charity, but I guess that's kind of spending it. If it comes out and you're not going to spend it in your normal day-to-day, what do I do with it? Well, you're going to reinvest it back into a non-qualified account, which you can do. But then that is this kind of compounding tax problem now, because once that money gets invested in this taxable investment, it continues to grow and generate interest, dividends, capital gains, which you pay tax on. And then you get the privilege of doing it again next year and next year and next year, the rest of your life.
Right.
You know, so that's my point, is understand what that looks like today, you know, while you have time, so that you can start to make some plans to say, okay, you know what, if I wait and do nothing, by the time, you know, I hit 75, I have whatever my Social Security benefit is, I've got a pension, and all of a sudden I have this significant RMD. And if it's way more than what you need and is going to force you into a higher bracket, which a lot of times it does. I mean, it's a pretty common scenario we see, especially for somebody that's done a good job saving for retirement. You know, once you hit that, you hit the wall, so to speak. You have to take the required distribution. The RMD can't be converted. It goes into a taxable investment. You know, if you want to convert at that point, you can, but now it's on top of the RMD. So a lot of times at that stage, it may not make sense, because now you're paying significant amounts of tax. So understand what this looks like up front. So,
well, a lot of people, well, here are these conversations, right? And they immediately go to their advisor and say, hey, I want to get all my money out of a 401k or the traditional IRA. I want to convert it to the Roth.
Put it all to the Roth. Yeah.
Put it all to the Roth. And that might be the right scenario for you, but definitely not at one clip. First of all, make sure you're spacing that out to the tax bracket conversation, but also just find out. Don't just assume that it's the best move, right? There could be, you really need to have that strategy because, again, every situation is going to be a little different. So it's not the worst thing to have RMDs. It just simply is what it is, right? So it's just figuring out the best strategy for how you've got your life set up.
Yeah. And I mean, there's all sorts of discussion in I want to say advertising at this point going on around taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a hot topic, and I'm glad to hear that it's kind of come to the forefront, because I think a lot of times people had not understood it, put it to the back burner, thinking, I'm going to be a lower bracket in retirement.
Right. That's the traditional thinking.
Worrying about it.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that it's starting to get some press, but you just have to understand what it looks like. Because I see now people moving too much in that direction and saying, got to get it all out of the IRAs and into the tax-free money. If all you have is Roth IRAs and Social Security, you're paying no tax, which that's a great thing, but you're wasting a lot of room in the tax brackets. Because remember, the tax brackets don't start until taxable income. So you have a standard deduction, so married couple, 27,000, in that neighborhood. So you think of it this way, there's 27,000 of income that you can have before you pay any tax anyways. So it doesn't mean having everything moved. It's understanding the makeup of your income. And I mean, if everything is in a Roth IRA and you have Social Security, well, then chances are very little, if any, of your Social Security even enters that tax equation.
A lot of advisors obviously are again, to your point, it's almost become marketed at this point, or it really has, say, hey, let's do a Roth conversion or whatever. And some truly wholly fully believe it, that's what, all your money should be over in the Roth. But as a CPA, I like the fact that you kind of look at this from multiple sides and go, okay, there's still some tax advantage things we can do by actually having taxable, tax deferred accounts. So,
absolutely. I mean, over time, it might make sense to get rid of it. And again, through the planning process, you can simply by using years after the conversion to stay under that standard deduction. We can still keep you in a 0% bracket if that is mathematically what makes sense.
The goal, right.
But again, a lot of times it's not going to make sense for somebody, especially if you're in a higher bracket, because, if you're only ever in retirement going to pay 25%, let's say.
Okay.
It might not make sense to do conversions at a 37% bracket today, because you have to run the math to see. Sometimes it does.
Right.
Oftentimes it doesn't, so don't get too hyped up on I got to get out of these tax deferred accounts, get everything to the Roth. It's a great strategy. Hear me out. We do a lot of Roth conversion planning with clients. So don't hear that I'm against Roth. Not at all. I am for the Roth used in the right way. It's too much of a good thing it can be bad. And that's exactly what we get to with this.
No, great. Because I appreciate you breaking that down that way, because that's exactly what happens, right? As humans, we see something, whatever it is, and we're like, I got to get on that, right? It's the diet pill. It's the whatever you want to call it. It's the new tread. Right. It's the new tread climber that's guaranteed to help you lose 30% more calories or whatever, right? So we easily can jump into that mode, and we don't. Part of the problem that we have as humans, and my wife and I talk about this all the time, especially with her being an occupational safety and health specialist, is we don't look at things 10 steps down the road. We make these knee-jerk reactions, and we've really been doing this heavily, obviously, for the last number of years, where make a snap decision, put a law in place, change whatever, and then we'll worry about how it's going to affect things 10 years from now, right?
Right.
And as a CPA, your job typically is looking backwards, right? That's what the CPA's role is. But then you also have that
historian side of it,
right. But then you have that forward-looking piece, because you're also a personal financial specialist as well. So I really love the fact that you're able to kind of take a bigger look, past, present, and future, from not only a tax standpoint but an income planning standpoint. And I think that's what people can miss out on if they're focusing on the hype.
Yeah, and there's, with a plan in place, it's something that isn't just set it and forget it either. You've got to understand and look at it every year. I mean, having that plan in place, you've got to understand that it's not just a plan for today and then never look at it again.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, have a plan, make sure, look forward, does it work? But then revisit that plan on a regular basis. What's changed in the laws today, right?
Yep.
I mean, have they
and they could
changed
change
the
it again
rules?
with the Secure Act 3.0. So
have the tax rates gone up? Do we need to take maybe a more aggressive position on conversions now because they're proposing higher taxes? I mean, there's all these factors you have to understand.
That could be coming, right?
So it's a dynamic scenario.
And we really need to kind of pay attention to this. And I know we're getting along, so we'll get out of here this week. But obviously, there's a lot going to be riding on the next presidential election. We're not going to get political. But, one of the reasons we've had a lot of conversation is taxes change. We just talked about the fact that we owe so much money. Are they raising taxes? More than likely, we feel like, most people feel like that's going to be the case. But probably nothing's going to happen until the election happens because they waited this long, right? So they're waiting to see probably who's going to have control and blah, 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 blah. And then they'll make some kind of decision from there. So and even if they don't, taxes go up in 26 anyway. So
without any act at this point, they do end up going up.
Right. So have a plan, have a conversation. But again, with RMDs, it's kind of, understanding the basics, the straightforwardness. You do have to take them, understand the age at which you have to take them, and just talk with your advisor on, getting started, making sure that you've got it all planned in place if you haven't yet. Again, for people, a lot of people who are getting close to that, they're hearing about it, they're just not sure what they need to do. So again, talk with your financial professional or reach out to Phil if you've got some questions. They'll be happy to help as always. You can find them at philstaxhacks.com. That's philstaxhacks.com, or call him at 248-888-7530, 248-888-7530. And don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple, Google, Spotify, or YouTube, where you can catch the show in audio or video form. Phil, thanks for hanging out and breaking it down, buddy.
Not a problem. Have a good week.
Always appreciate you. We'll see you next time here on Phil's Tax Hacks and other retirement facts.
Investment advisory services offered through AFS Wealth Management. The content of this program is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. Investments and/or investment strategies involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will achieve its objectives.